Horse gaits are the various ways in which a horse can move, either naturally or as a result of specialized training by humans. Classification. Gaits are typically categorized into two groups: the natural gaits that most horses will use without special training, and the ambling gaits that are various smooth-riding 4-beat footfall patterns that may appear naturally in some individuals, but which usually occur only in certain breeds. Special training is often required before a horse will perform an ambling gait in response to a rider's command. Another system of classification that applies to quadrupeds uses three categories: walking and ambling gaits, running and trotting gaits, and leaping gaits. The British Horse Society dressage rules require competitors to perform 4 variations of the walk, 6 forms of the trot, 5 leaping gaits, halt, and rein back, but not the gallop. The British Horse Society equitation examinations also require proficiency in the gallop as distinct from the canter. The so-called natural gaits, in increasing order of speed, are the walk, trot, canter, and gallop. Some consider these as 3 gaits, with the canter a variation of the gallop, even though the canter is distinguished by having 3 beats, whereas the gallop has 4 beats. All 4 gaits are seen in wild horse populations, while other intermediate speed gaits may occur naturally to some horses. These 4 basic gaits occur in nature across almost all horse breeds. In some animals the trot is replaced by the pace or an ambling gait. Horses who possess an ambling gait are usually also able to trot. Walk. The walk is a 4-beat gait that averages about 4 miles per hour. When walking, a horse's legs follow this sequence: left hind leg, left front leg, right hind leg, right front leg, in a regular 1, 2, 3, 4 beat. At the walk, the horse will alternate between having 3 or 2 feet on the ground. A horse moves its head and neck in a slight up and down motion that helps maintain balance. In detail, suppose the horse starts by lifting its left front leg. It then lifts its right hind leg. Next, the left front foot touches the ground, then the horse lifts its right front leg, and shortly afterwards it sets down the right rear leg. Then it lifts its left rear leg, puts down the front right, lifts the left front, puts down the rear left, and the pattern repeats. Ideally, the advancing rear hoof oversteps the spot where the previously advancing front hoof touched the ground. The more the rear hoof oversteps, the smoother and more comfortable the walk becomes. Individual horses and different breeds vary in the smoothness of the walk. However, a rider will almost always feel some degree of gentle side-to-side motion in the horse's hips as each hind leg reaches forward. The fastest walks with a 4-beat footfall pattern are actually the lateral forms of ambling gaits, such as the running walk, single foot, and similar rapid but smooth intermediate speed gaits. If a horse begins to speed up and lose a regular 4-beat cadence to its gait, the horse is no longer walking, but is beginning to either trot or pace. Trot. The trot is a 2-beat gait that has a wide variation in possible speeds, but averages about 8 miles per hour. A very slow trot is sometimes referred to as a jog. An extremely fast trot has no special name, but in harness racing, the trot of a standard bred is faster than the gallop of the average non-race horse. In this gait, the horse moves its legs in unison in diagonal pairs. From the standpoint of the balance of the horse, this is a very stable gait, and the horse need not make major balancing motions with its head and neck. The trot is the working gait for a horse. Despite what one sees in movies, horses can only canter and gallop for short periods at a time, after which they need time to rest and recover. Horses in good condition can maintain a working trot 4 hours. The trot is the main way horses travel quickly from one place to the next, depending on the horse and its speed. A trot can be difficult for a rider to sit because the body of the horse actually drops a bit between beats and bounces up again when the next set of legs strike the ground. Each time another diagonal pair of legs hits the ground, the rider can be jolted upwards out of the saddle and meet the horse with some force on the way back down. Therefore, at most speeds above a jog, especially in English riding disciplines, most riders post to the trot, rising up and down in rhythm with the horse to avoid being jolted. Posting is easy on the horse's back, and once mastered is also easy on the rider. To not be jostled out of the saddle and to not harm the horse by bouncing on its back, riders must learn specific skills in order to sit the trot. Most riders can easily learn to sit a slow jog trot without bouncing. A skilled rider can ride even a powerfully extended trot without bouncing, but to do so requires well-conditioned back and abdominal muscles, and to do so for long periods is tiring for even experienced riders. A fast, uncollected, racing trot, such as that of the harness racing horse, is virtually impossible to sit, because the trot is such a safe and efficient gait for a horse. Learning to ride the trot correctly is an important component in almost all equestrian disciplines. Nonetheless, gaited, or ambling, horses that possess smooth four-beat intermediate gaits that replace or supplement the trot are popular with riders who prefer, for various reasons, not to have to ride at a trot. Two variations of the trot are specially trained in advanced dressage horses, the piaffe and the passage. The piaffe is essentially created by asking the horse to trot in place, with very little forward motion. The passage is an exaggerated slow-motion trot. Both require tremendous collection, careful training and considerable physical conditioning for a horse to perform. Canter and gallop. Canter. The canter is a controlled, three-beat gait that usually is a bit faster than the average trot, but slower than the gallop. The average speed of a canter is 16 to 27 kilometers per hour, depending on the length of the stride of the horse. Listening to a horse canter, one can usually hear the three beats as though a drum had been struck 3 times in succession. Then there is a rest, and immediately afterwards the three-beat occurs again. The faster the horse is moving, the longer the suspension time between the three beats. The word is thought to be short for Canterbury gallop. In the canter, one of the horse's rear legs, the right rear leg, for example, propels the horse forward. During this beat, the horse is supported only on that single leg while the remaining 3 legs are moving forward. On the next beat, the horse catches itself on the left rear and right front legs while the other hind leg is still momentarily on the ground. On the third beat, the horse catches itself on the left front leg while the diagonal pair is momentarily still in contact with the ground. The more extended foreleg is matched by a slightly more extended hind leg on the same side. This is referred to as a lead. Except in special cases, such as the counter-canter, it is desirable for a horse to lead with its inside legs when on a circle. Therefore, a horse that begins cantering with the right rear leg as described above will have the left front and hind legs each land farther forward. This would be referred to as being on the left lead. When a rider is added to the horse's natural balance, the question of the lead becomes more important. When riding in an enclosed area such as an arena, the correct lead provides the horse with better balance. The rider typically signals the horse which lead to take when moving from a slower gait into the canter. In addition, when jumping over fences, the rider typically signals the horse to land on the correct lead to approach the next fence or turn. The rider can also request the horse to deliberately take up the wrong lead, a move required in some dressage competitions and routine in polo, which requires a degree of collection and balance in the horse. The switch from one lead to another without breaking gait is called the flying lead change or flying change. This switch is also a feature of dressage and reining schooling and competition. If a horse is leading with one front foot but the opposite hind foot, it produces an awkward rolling movement called a cross canter, disunited canter or cross-firing. The lope is a Western term for the canter. Gallop. The gallop is very much like the canter, except that it is faster, more ground covering, and the 3-beat canter changes to a 4-beat gait. It is the fastest gait of the horse, averaging about 25 to 30 miles per hour, and in the wild is used when the animal needs to flee from predators or simply cover short distances quickly. Horses seldom will gallop more than 1 or 2 miles before they need to rest, though horses can sustain a moderately paced gallop for longer distances before they become winded and have to slow down. The gallop is also the gait of the classic race horse. Modern thoroughbred horse races are seldom longer than 1.5 miles, though in some countries Arabian horses are sometimes raced as far as 2.5 miles. The fastest galloping speed is achieved by the American quarter horse, which in a short sprint of a quarter mile or less has been clocked at speeds approaching 55 miles per hour. The Guinness Book of World Records lists a thoroughbred as having averaged 43.97 miles per hour over a 2-furlong distance in 2008. Like a canter, the horse will strike off with its non-leading hind foot, but the second stage of the canter becomes, in the gallop, the second and third stages because the inside hind foot hits the ground a split second before the outside front foot. Then both gaits end with the striking off of the leading leg, followed by a moment of suspension when all 4 feet are off the ground. A careful listener or observer can tell an extended canter from a gallop by the presence of the 4th beat, contrary to the old classic paintings of running horses, which showed all 4 legs stretched out in the suspension phase. When the legs are stretched out, at least one foot is still in contact with the ground. When all 4 feet are off the ground in the suspension phase of the gallop, the legs are bent rather than extended. In 1877, Leland Stanford settled an argument about whether race horses were ever fully airborne. He paid photographer Eadweard Muybridge to prove it photographically. The resulting photo, the first documented example of high-speed photography, clearly showed the horse airborne. According to Equix, who analyzed the biometrics of racing thoroughbreds, the average racing colt has a stride length of 24.6 feet. That of Secretariat, for instance, was 24.8 feet, which was probably part of his success. A controlled gallop used to show a horse's ground-covering stride in horse show competition is called a gallop in hand, or a hand gallop. Note that when a horse jumps over a fence, the legs are stretched out while in the air and the front legs hit the ground before the hind legs, which is completely different from the suspended phase of a gallop. Essentially, the horse takes the first 2 steps of a galloping stride on the takeoff side of the fence, and the other 2 steps on the landing side. A horse has to collect its hindquarters after a jump to strike off into the next stride. Pace. The pace is a lateral 2-beat gait. In the pace, the 2 legs on the same side of the horse move forward together, unlike the trot, where the 2 legs diagonally opposite from each other move forward together. In both the pace and the trot, 2 feet are always off the ground. The trot is much more common, but some horses, particularly in breeds bred for harness racing, naturally prefer to pace. Paces are also faster than trotters on the average, though horses are raced at both gaits. Among standard-bred horses, paces breed truer than trotters. That is, trotting sires have a higher proportion of paces among the get than paces. pacing sires do of trotters. A slow pace can be relatively comfortable, as the rider is lightly rocked from side to side. A slightly uneven pace that is somewhat between a pace and an amble is the sobrandando of the Peruvian paso. On the other hand, a slow pace is considered undesirable in an Icelandic horse, where it is called a lull or a piggy pace. With one exception, a fast pace is uncomfortable for riding and very difficult to sit because the rider is moved rapidly from side to side. The motion feels somewhat as if the rider is on a camel, another animal that naturally paces. However, a camel is much taller than a horse, and so even at relatively fast speeds, a rider can follow the rocking motion of a camel. A pacing horse, being smaller and taking quicker steps, moves from side to side at a rate that becomes difficult for a rider to follow at speed. So though the gait is faster and useful for harness racing, it becomes impractical as a gait for riding at speed over long distances. However, in the case of the Icelandic horse, where the pace is known as the skeith, flying pace, or flugskeið, it is a smooth and highly valued gait, ridden in short bursts at great speed. A horse that paces and is not used in harness is often taught to perform some form of amble, obtained by lightly unbalancing the horse so the footfalls of the pace break up into a 4-beat lateral gait that is smoother to ride. A rider cannot properly post to a pacing horse because there is no diagonal gait pattern to follow, though some riders attempt to avoid jostling by rhythmically rising and sitting. Based on studies of the Icelandic horse, it is possible that the pace may be heritable and linked to a single genetic mutation on DMRT3 in the same manner as the lateral ambling gaits. Ambling gaits. There are a significant number of names for various 4-beat intermediate gaits, though these names derive from differences in footfall patterns and speed. Historically they were once grouped together and collectively referred to as the amble. Quote, in the United States, horses that are able to amble are referred to as gaited. Quote, in almost all cases, the primary feature of the ambling gaits is that 3 of the 4 feet are on the ground at any time, reflected in the colloquial term, single foot. All ambling gaits are faster than a walk but usually slower than a canter. They are smoother for a rider than either a trot or a pace, and most can be sustained for relatively long periods of time, making them particularly desirable for trail riding and other tasks where a rider must spend long periods of time in the saddle. There are 2 basic types: lateral, wherein the front and hind feet on the same side move in sequence, and diagonal, where the front and hind feet on opposite sides move in sequence. Ambling gaits are further distinguished by whether the footfall rhythm is isochronous, 4 equal beats in a 1, 2, 3, 4 rhythm, or a non-isochronous 1 to 2, 3 to 4 rhythm created by a slight pause between the ground strike of the forefoot of one side to the rear of the other. Not all horses can perform an ambling gait. However, many breeds can be trained to produce them. In most gaited breeds, an ambling gait is a hereditary trait. A 2012 DNA study of movement in Icelandic horses and mice have determined that mutation on the gene DMRT3, which is related to limb movement and motion, causes a premature stop codon in horses with lateral ambling gaits. The major ambling gaits include: the foxtrot is most often associated with the Missouri foxtrot breed, but is also seen under different names in other gaited breeds. The foxtrot is a 4-beat diagonal gait in which the front foot of the diagonal pair lands before the hind. The same footfall pattern is characteristic of the troker, passertrot and marcher batids seen in various South American breeds. Many South American horse breeds have a range of smooth intermediate lateral ambling gaits. The paso fino's speed variations are called the paso fino, paso corto, and paso largo. The Peruvian paso's lateral gaits are known as the paso llano and sobrandando. The lateral gait of the Mangala tiger marchador is called the marcha picada. The rack-a-racking is a lateral gait most commonly associated with the 5-gaited American saddlebred. In the rack the speed is increased to be approximately that of the pace, but it is a 4-beat gait with equal intervals between each beat. The running walk, a 4-beat lateral gait with footfalls in the same sequence as the regular walk, but characterized by greater speed and smoothness. It is a distinctive natural gait of the Tennessee walking horse. The slow gait is a general term for various lateral gaits that follow the same general lateral footfall pattern, but the rhythm and collection of the movements are different. Terms for various slow gaits include the stepping pace and single foot. The told is a gait that is often described as being unique to the Icelandic horse. The footfall pattern is the same as for the rack, but the told is characterized by more freedom and liquidity of movement. Some breeds of horses that are related to the Icelandic horse, living in the Faroe Islands and Norway, also told. The Ravala is a 4-beat lateral gait associated with Marwari, Kathiawari, Sindhi horse breeds of India.